Picture this, a crisp autumn morning in downtown Seattle, and Sarah Mitchell stands before a towering glass building, smoothing down her perfectly pressed blazer. It's the same building where, 5 years ago, she walked out with tears threatening to spill from her eyes, clutching a rejection letter that seemed to weigh 1,000 pounds. Today, she's wearing the same lucky earrings her grandmother gave her, small pearl studs that catch the morning light. But everything else? That's different. The confidence in her stride, the determination in her eyes, and most importantly, the letter in her designer handbag that reads Chief Executive Officer, Horizon Technologies. Let me take you back to 2019. Sarah was fresh out of business school, armed with an MBA, stellar recommendations, and a track record that could make any recruiter's eyes light up. She'd spent years building her expertise in tech innovation, leading successful projects, and earning accolades that should have made her a shoo-in for the senior project manager position at Horizon Technologies. The interview seemed to go perfectly. Sarah answered every question with precision, demonstrated her deep understanding of the industry, and even offered innovative solutions to some of Horizon's ongoing challenges. The panel nodded approvingly, and their smiles seemed genuine. But then came that letter, the one that started with, "We regret to inform you." Sarah knew the statistics. She'd seen the reports about how less than 1% of tech CEOs were black women. She'd heard the whispers, the subtle suggestions that certain spaces weren't traditionally meant for people who looked like her. But Sarah Mitchell wasn't raised to let tradition dictate her future. Her mother, a high school teacher who raised 3 kids single-handedly while earning her doctorate, had taught her that rejection is just a redirection. Her grandfather, who built a successful local grocery store despite being denied loans from 7 different banks in the 1960s, showed her that persistence wasn't just about trying again, it was about coming back stronger. What happened next wasn't just a comeback story. It was a masterclass in turning rejection into rocket fuel. Sarah took that rejection letter and pinned it to her home office wall, not as a reminder of failure, but as a challenge. She launched her own tech consultancy firm from her tiny apartment, targeting small businesses that bigger firms overlooked. Within 2 years, her innovative approach to integrating AI solutions for small businesses caught the attention of industry leaders. Her client list grew from local shops to national chains. She pioneered a revolutionary customer service platform that made headlines in tech magazines. Speaking engagements followed, and then came the investments, the partnerships, and the accolades. But Sarah wasn't done. She had her eyes set on something bigger. When whispers started circulating that Horizon Technologies was struggling with innovation and losing market share, Sarah saw her opportunity. She spent months developing a comprehensive turnaround strategy, building alliances with key investors, and positioning herself as the solution to Horizon's problems. The same boardroom where she once interviewed for a manager position became the setting for her pitch to become CEO. The same executives who had passed her over 5 years ago now sat in stunned silence as she laid out her vision for transforming Horizon Technologies. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. As Sarah stands outside that building today, ready to walk in as the new CEO, she's about to uncover something about her original rejection that will shake the very foundation of the company. The truth behind that rejection letter, which she's about to discover in her first hour as CEO, will set off a chain of events that no one could have predicted. What Sarah doesn't know yet is that the documents waiting on her new desk will reveal a pattern that goes far beyond her personal experience. The revelation will force her to make a decision that could either heal old wounds or tear the company apart. Some would call it poetic justice, returning as the boss to the company that rejected you. But Sarah isn't interested in justice. She's interested in excellence, in innovation, and in creating opportunities for others who might have faced similar closed doors. As she prepares to enter the building, her hand brushes against that old rejection letter, now folded and tucked into her notebook as a reminder of how far she's come. The security guard greets her with a warm "Good morning, Ms. Mitchell." She smiles, remembering how 5 years ago she had to sign in as a visitor. Now, she holds the master key to the entire building. But will the power to change the system be enough to address what she's about to uncover? As she steps into the elevator, Sarah takes a deep breath. The weight of making history as one of the few black female CEOs in tech sits squarely on her shoulders, but it's not nearly as heavy as the decision she'll have to make in the next few hours. The doors close, and as the elevator begins its ascent to the executive floor, Sarah Mitchell has no idea that her real story, the one that will truly test her leadership, her principles, and everything she's fought for, is just about to begin. What will Sarah discover in those documents? How will she handle the truth behind her rejection? And most importantly, how will her next move impact not just Horizon Technologies, but the entire landscape for underrepresented leaders in the tech industry? The answers to these questions will challenge everything she thought she knew about success, leadership, and justice. But for now, the elevator continues its climb, carrying Sarah Mitchell towards a moment that will redefine not just her future, but the future of corporate America itself. The executive floor of Horizon Technologies is eerily quiet as Sarah steps out of the elevator. The early morning sun streams through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the premium hardwood flooring she once admired during her interview. Janet, the executive assistant who's been with the company for 20 years, stands up from her desk with a warm but nervous smile. "Welcome, Ms. Mitchell. Your office is ready," Janet says, leading the way. Sarah notices how Janet's hands fidget with her reading glasses, a telltale sign that something's off. After all, Sarah's developed a keen eye for reading people during her years as a consultant. It's the same instinct telling her now that Janet knows something. The CEO's office is exactly how Sarah imagined it would be: spacious, modern, with a spectacular view of the Seattle skyline. But it's not the view that catches her attention. It's the thick manila envelope sitting dead center on the polished mahogany desk, marked "Confidential, CEO Eyes Only" in bold red letters. "The board left this for you," Janet explains, hovering by the door. "They said it requires your immediate attention." There's that nervous energy again, crackling in the air like static before a storm. Sarah sets her designer bag down and takes a seat in the plush leather chair. It still holds the lingering scent of expensive cologne, probably from Gerald Thompson, the previous CEO who stepped down rather abruptly last month. The official story was early retirement, but the tech blogs have been buzzing with rumors of internal conflicts and power struggles. As she reaches for the envelope, her phone buzzes. It's a text from Marcus, her younger brother and best friend. "Proud of you, sis. Show them what they missed out on." Sarah smiles, remembering how Marcus had been there the day of her rejection, helping her pick up the pieces over cheap takeout and expensive wine. The envelope feels heavy in her hands, and not just because of its contents. Opening it means there's no turning back. Whatever truth lies inside could change everything: her plans for the company, her vision for the future, maybe even her understanding of the past. With steady hands, she breaks the seal and begins reading. The first document is dated exactly 5 years ago, the day of her rejection. It's an internal memo from Gerald Thompson to the board of directors. As her eyes scan the page, her breath catches in her throat. The memo reveals a systematic pattern of discrimination masked behind corporate policy, carefully worded to avoid legal scrutiny. But that's not all. The next document is a series of emails between board members discussing what they called the diversity risk. They're concerned that having too many minority executives might unsettle their traditional client base. Sarah's application hadn't just been rejected. It had been specifically flagged as part of this discriminatory practice. Her hands begin to shake, not with anger, but with a complex mix of emotions she can't quite name. The final document in the pile makes her sit up straight. It's a list of qualified candidates who were passed over in the last 5 years, all sharing similar backgrounds to her own. Some names she recognizes from industry events and networking circles. Talented individuals who, like her, probably thought they just weren't good enough. A knock at the door interrupts her reading. It's Richard Chen, one of the few board members who had voted in favor of her CEO appointment. "Sarah, I see you found the documents," he says, his expression grave. "The board is split on whether to address this publicly. Some want to bury it, others think we need to come clean. As CEO, the decision is yours to make." Sarah looks down at the papers spread across her desk, then out at the Seattle skyline. The same view that had once seemed like an impossible dream now serves as a backdrop to one of the biggest decisions of her career. Does she expose the truth and risk destabilizing the company she's just been entrusted to lead? Or does she handle this quietly, focusing instead on changing the system from within? Her grandmother's pearl earrings catch the morning light again, reminding her of the wisdom passed down through generations of strong women in her family. Sometimes, her grandmother used to say, the right path isn't the easy one. Before she can respond to Richard, her computer screen lights up with an urgent email. It's from a senior HR director, marked high priority. Ms. Mitchell, we have a situation. A reporter from Tech Insider is asking about internal hiring practices from 2019. They seem to have sources. How would you like us to proceed? Sarah's heart races as she realizes the timeline just got a lot shorter. Whatever decision she's going to make, it needs to happen now. The story is about to break with or without her input. But there's something else. Another document partially hidden beneath the others, bearing a signature she recognizes all too well. As she pulls it out, Richard's face pales. That wasn't supposed to be in there, he whispers, reaching for the paper. But Sarah's already scanning it, her eyes widening as she discovers a connection that changes everything she thought she knew about her rejection, her appointment as CEO, and the real reason behind Gerald Thompson's sudden retirement. The document reveals a conspiracy that goes deeper than simple discrimination, one that ties together corporate espionage, financial manipulation, and a power play that's been years in the making. And suddenly, Sarah realizes that addressing the discrimination might be the least of her problems. The weight of the decisions before her feels overwhelming, but then she remembers something her mother always said. Leadership isn't about having all the answers. It's about asking the right questions. And right now, Sarah has plenty of questions. The most pressing one being, who can she really trust? As the morning sun climbs higher over Seattle, Sarah Mitchell sits in her new office, surrounded by evidence of a past she's determined to change and facing a future that's far more complicated than she ever imagined. The next few hours will test everything she stands for, her principles, her leadership, and her vision for what Horizon Technologies could become. But first, she needs to figure out what's on page 3 of that hidden document, and why Richard Chen seems so desperate to keep it from her eyes. Sarah's fingers hover over the keyboard as she contemplates her reply to the Tech Insider reporter. The third page of the hidden document lies before her, its contents more disturbing than she could have imagined. It reveals that Gerald Thompson's early retirement wasn't just about discrimination. It was about covering up years of strategic sabotage aimed at devaluing the company. The pieces start falling into place. The mysterious decline in Horizon's market share, the sudden departure of key clients, the puzzling technical glitches that plagued their biggest product launches. It wasn't incompetence. It was intentional, and the mastermind behind it all, a shadow investment group with ties to their biggest competitor, ready to swoop in and buy Horizon at a fraction of its true value. A soft knock interrupts her thoughts. It's Maya Rodriguez, the head of product development, a brilliant engineer who's been with Horizon for 8 years. Ms. Mitchell, do you have a moment? Maya's expression is a mixture of hope and hesitation. There's something you need to see. Maya pulls out her tablet and shows Sarah a series of code reviews from the past year. These bugs in our software? They weren't accidents. Someone deliberately inserted vulnerabilities into our security systems. But every time I tried to report it, my concerns were dismissed or mysteriously disappeared from our tracking system. Sarah's mind races back to her consulting days, when she noticed similar patterns in other companies targeted for hostile takeovers. But this was different. This was personal. The same people who had rejected her application had been slowly destroying the company from within. Her phone buzzes again. This time it's a message from Janet. Ms. Mitchell, Mr. Thompson is in the lobby. He's demanding to speak with you. Sarah's heart skips a beat. The former CEO's unexpected appearance can't be a coincidence. Before she can respond, Richard Chen bursts into the office, looking flustered. Sarah, don't talk to Gerald. He knows we found the documents. He's here to damage control. But there's something in Richard's voice that doesn't sit quite right. Why is he so invested in keeping Gerald away? Sarah glances at Maya, who's been quietly observing the exchange. Their eyes meet, and an unspoken understanding passes between them. Maya subtly nods toward her tablet. There's more to the story that she hasn't shared yet. Richard, Sarah says carefully, why don't you join me for the meeting with Gerald? After all, as a board member, you should be part of this discussion. She watches his reaction closely, noting how he shifts his weight from one foot to the other. I have another engagement, he stammers. Besides, Gerald can be quite volatile. It's better if you handle this one-on-one. He backs toward the door, making excuses about an urgent call. As soon as Richard leaves, Maya steps forward. Ms. Mitchell, there's something else you should know. The code vulnerabilities? They were approved by two digital signatures, Gerald Thompson's and Richard Chen's. The revelation hit Sarah like a thunderbolt. Richard's support for her CEO appointment, his convenient delivery of the incriminating documents, his nervous behavior. It wasn't about doing the right thing. He was setting her up to be the fall person for years of corporate sabotage. A notification pops up on her computer. The Tech Insider reporter has sent another email, this time with screenshots of internal documents. They're giving her 1 hour to comment before they run the story. But these screenshots show only half the truth, carefully selected to paint a picture of corporate discrimination without revealing the deeper conspiracy. Sarah looks out at the Seattle skyline again, remembering all the times she'd been told to play it safe and not rock the boat. Her mother's voice echoes in her mind. Sometimes the biggest risk is not taking one at all. She turns to Maya, who's still waiting expectantly. Get me everything you have on the code vulnerabilities. And Janet? She calls out to her assistant. Tell Mr. Thompson I'll see him in the main conference room in 15 minutes. And contact HR. I want every person on that rejection list from the past 5 years contacted today. As Maya hurries off and Janet picks up the phone, Sarah opens her laptop and begins typing. She's not just writing a response to Tech Insider anymore. She's drafting a manifesto that will either save Horizon Technologies or burn her career to the ground. The elevator dings, and she can hear Gerald Thompson's booming voice in the reception area. In just a few minutes, she'll face off against the man who rejected her 5 years ago, while dealing with a board member who's secretly working against her and trying to prevent a hostile takeover that could destroy everything she's worked for. But first, she needs to figure out why Maya's hands trembled when she mentioned Richard's name, and what's hidden in the encrypted file attachment that just appeared in her inbox, marked simply, Insurance Policy. Open only if they get to you first. Sarah takes a deep breath, straightening her blazer as she walks toward the conference room. Through the glass walls, she can see Gerald Thompson pacing like a caged lion, his usually perfectly coiffed silver hair slightly disheveled. The encrypted file from Maya weighs heavily on her mind, but it'll have to wait. Right now, she needs to face the man who started it all. The conference room door swings open, and Sarah steps in with the confidence of someone who's faced rejection and emerged stronger. Gerald, she says coolly, this is an unexpected pleasure. His head snaps up, and for a moment, she catches something in his eyes, not anger, but fear. You need to stop digging, Gerald says, his voice low and urgent. You have no idea what you're about to unleash. But before he can continue, both their phones buzz simultaneously. Breaking news alert. Horizon Technologies stock plummets amid rumors of security breach. Sarah's phone keeps buzzing. Messages from board members, investors, and reporters flooding in. But one message stands out. A text from Maya with a single word. Ready. Whatever's in that encrypted file, now might be the time to open it. Janet appears at the door, slightly out of breath. Ms. Mitchell, Richard Chen is calling an emergency board meeting. They're trying to vote for your immediate suspension. Her voice drops to a whisper, and there's a team from Weber Tech in the lobby. They're calling it a routine security audit. Gerald's face goes pale. They weren't supposed to move this fast, he mutters, seemingly forgetting Sarah's presence. He pulls out his phone, fingers trembling as he types. Sarah's mind races. Weber Tech, their biggest competitor, known for aggressive takeovers. The same company that had mysteriously gained access to Horizon's client list last year. Everything's connecting, but she needs proof before time runs out. She opens her laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard as she accesses Maya's encrypted file. What she finds makes her blood run cold. Video recordings of late-night meetings between Richard Chen and Weber Tech executives, detailed plans for destroying Horizon from within, and most shockingly, evidence that Gerald Thompson had tried to stop it, only to be blackmailed into silence. The conference room door bursts open again. It's Maya, clutching her tablet like a shield. They're deleting everything, she says breathlessly. Richard's team is wiping the servers, but I backed up the code logs. She pauses, looking at Gerald. All of them. Sarah's phone rings. It's Marcus, her brother. Sis, you need to see this. Your rejection letter from 5 years ago. I found something weird in the metadata. The decision was changed last minute. Someone overrode the original approval. The pieces clicked together like a complex puzzle. Gerald wasn't the mastermind. He was another pawn in Richard's game. The discrimination wasn't just about race or gender. It was about keeping out anyone who might spot the sabotage. Suddenly, the lights flicker, and the building's security system lets out a warning beep. Emergency protocols engaged, announces the automated system. Through the glass walls, Sarah sees Richard Chen striding toward the conference room, flanked by two WeberTech executives and security personnel. Maya's tablet lights up with alerts. "They're trying to lock us out of the system," she says, fingers dancing across the screen. "But they don't know about my backdoor access. We have maybe 5 minutes before they find it." Sarah looks at Gerald, who seems to have aged years in minutes. "Why did you really come here today?" she asks. His answer could change everything. "Because," Gerald says, pulling out a USB drive, "I've been gathering evidence for years, waiting for someone brave enough to use it. Richard doesn't just want to destroy Horizon. He wants to destroy everything we built to protect our users' data. If WeberTech gets their hands on our security protocols." The conference room door handle turns. Richard's voice carries through the glass. "Sarah, as acting board chairman, I need you to step aside. This is a matter of company security." Sarah has seconds to decide. The Tech Insider reporter's deadline is in 3 minutes. The board meeting starts in 5. WeberTech's team is already in the building. And somewhere in the mountain of evidence before her lies the truth that could either save Horizon Technologies or destroy it completely. She looks at Maya, who nods firmly, then at Gerald, who clutches the USB drive like a lifeline. Janet stands by the door, her hand hovering over the security lockdown button, waiting for a signal. Outside, Richard Chen's smug smile begins to falter as he realizes he can't override the door lock. He doesn't know that Sarah's about to make a move that will change not just Horizon's future, but the entire tech industry's landscape. Sarah takes one last look at her grandmother's pearl earrings reflected in the glass wall, remembering everything they represent: dignity, perseverance, and the courage to stand up for what's right. Her fingers move toward her laptop keyboard, ready to set in motion a plan that no one sees coming. The next 5 minutes will determine everything. But first, she needs to know what's on Gerald's USB drive and why Richard Chen looks so terrified at the sight of it. Sarah plugs Gerald's USB drive into her laptop, her heart pounding as the files load. But before she can open them, her screen flickers, displaying a message she never expected. Project Phoenix activation detected, initiating global server reset. The text is followed by a familiar logo, not WeberTech's, the one she designed herself years ago. "That's impossible," she whispers, looking at Gerald in disbelief. "This was my rejected project proposal from 5 years ago. The security system I designed but never got to implement." Gerald's expression shifts from fear to something else: respect, maybe even pride. "We didn't reject your proposal, Sarah," Gerald says quietly. "We implemented it in secret. It was the only way to protect it from Richard and his WeberTech allies. Your system has been running in the background for years, gathering evidence, tracking every suspicious move." Maya's tablet suddenly lights up with thousands of notifications. The reset, it's not destroying data, it's revealing it. Hidden servers all over the world are activating, documenting every piece of corporate sabotage they've detected. Through the glass walls, they watch Richard's face turn ashen as his phone starts buzzing incessantly. The WeberTech executives with him are already backing away, their carefully constructed plan crumbling in real time. But then Janet rushes in, clutching a stack of papers. "There's something else," she says, her voice shaking. "I've been Mr. Thompson's assistant for 20 years, but," she pauses, gathering courage, "I'm also an undercover agent for the Securities and Exchange Commission. We've been building a case against WeberTech for years, and Sarah's system just gave us everything we needed." The revelation hits the room like a thunderbolt. Gerald slumps in his chair, looking both relieved and exhausted. "That's why you never left, even when things got suspicious," he says to Janet. "I always wondered." Sarah's phone buzzes. Another message from Marcus. "Sis, you need to check Dad's old files. Remember his consulting work for WeberTech in '99? It's all connected." Her hands freeze over the keyboard. Their father, James Mitchell, had worked as a security consultant for WeberTech decades ago, before his mysterious retirement. He never talked about his work there, but the timing coincided with WeberTech's first major data privacy scandal. Maya's voice cuts through Sarah's thoughts. "Miss Mitchell, look at this." She turns her tablet to show a series of photographs, old company pictures from WeberTech, circa 1999. In one of them, Sarah spots her father standing next to a much younger Richard Chen. But it's the document they're holding that catches her eye. A patent application for a security system remarkably similar to her own. "They stole my father's work," Sarah realizes aloud. "And then they tried to steal mine." The pieces are falling into place, but the picture they're forming is bigger and more dangerous than she'd imagined. Suddenly, the building's lights flash red. "Security breach in server room B," announces the automated system. On the security cameras, they watch as a team of unknown individuals in WeberTech uniforms attempt to access the main servers. "They're not here for a security audit," Maya says, fingers flying across her tablet. "They're trying to physically steal the servers before your system can reveal everything." Through the glass, they see Richard Chen sprinting toward the elevators, but he's stopped by building security, alerted by Janet's quick thinking. The WeberTech executives are already being detained in the lobby. Sarah's phone lights up again. The Tech Insider reporter is calling. The stock market is in chaos as rumors of corporate espionage spread. The board members are demanding answers. And somewhere in the building, a team of corporate thieves is getting closer to servers containing decades of secrets. But before Sarah can act, her laptop displays another message. "Secondary protocol activated. Welcome back, James Mitchell." Her father's name on the screen stops her cold. He passed away 3 years ago, taking his WeberTech secrets to the grave, or so she'd thought. What else had he built into this system? What fail-safes and revelations lay waiting in the code? The next few minutes would determine not just the fate of Horizon Technologies, but potentially expose decades of corporate corruption. Sarah looks at her unlikely allies: Gerald, the repentant former CEO; Maya, the vigilant engineer; and Janet, the undercover SEC agent, knowing that what they do next will make headlines across the globe. But first, she needs to understand why her father's name is appearing now, what's in the encrypted files that are suddenly flooding her screen, and most importantly, why there's a countdown timer ticking away in the corner of her laptop display, showing just 15 minutes until something called Operation Clean Slate begins. Sarah's fingers fly across the keyboard, her father's code coming back to her like a half-remembered dream. The countdown timer shows 12 minutes remaining as she dives into the encrypted files. Each layer she uncovers reveals more of her father's master plan and the true purpose of Operation Clean Slate. "He didn't just build a security system," she breathes, understanding dawning in her eyes. "He built a kill switch for corporate corruption. Every unauthorized server access, every stolen piece of code, every manipulated financial record, it's all documented and linked to specific executives." Maya leans in, her eyes widening at the code scrolling across the screen. This is genius. The system doesn't just track corruption, it creates an unbreakable chain of evidence. No one can deny their involvement. Through the security cameras, they watch the WeberTech team's frustrated attempts to breach the server room. But with each failed attempt, more of their illegal activities are being logged and broadcasted to regulatory authorities. 8 minutes, Janet announces, hanging up her phone. The SEC enforcement team is on their way, but Richard's people are trying to initiate an emergency board vote to shut down the entire system. Gerald stands up, straightening his tie. "Not if I testify first." He turns to Sarah. "Your father saved my life 20 years ago by warning me about WeberTech's illegal activities. I've spent years playing along, gathering evidence, waiting for the right moment, waiting for you." Suddenly, the elevator doors open, and Marcus bursts in, clutching their father's old leather briefcase. "Found it," he exclaims. "Dad's original notebook. The passwords, the fail-safes, everything." Sarah's laptop chimes, 5 minutes remaining. She opens her father's notebook, finding a handwritten message on the final page. For Sarah. "Sometimes the best way to break through a glass ceiling is to build a glass house first. Make them all transparent. Love, Dad." With trembling fingers, she enters the final command sequence. Around them, screens light up across the building, displaying evidence of years of corporate corruption. Not just at Weber Tech and Horizon, but at dozens of major tech companies. The same discriminatory practices, the same pattern of sabotage, the same players appearing again and again. 1 minute, Maya announces, just as Richard Chen breaks free from security and rushes toward the conference room. But before he reaches the door, every phone in the building lights up with breaking news alerts. Weber Tech CEO arrested. Mass resignation of tech executives following corruption exposure. SEC announces largest corporate fraud investigation in history. The timer hits 0 and Operation Clean Slate activates. But instead of destroying data, it does something unprecedented. It makes everything transparent. Every email, every decision, every rejected application becomes public record. The glass walls of corporate America become truly transparent. Richard Chen slumps against the door as his phone explodes with notifications of his frozen assets and pending criminal charges. The Weber Tech team surrenders in the server room. Their mission failed. But just as victory seems certain, Sarah notices something strange in the code. A second program is running parallel to her father's, using the chaos to siphon data toward an unknown destination. The signature is familiar. It's Maya's code. Maya. Sarah turns to confront her ally, but Maya is smiling, not with guilt, but with satisfaction. Your father wasn't working alone, Maya explains, pulling out an ID card. Project Phoenix was a joint operation between multiple regulatory agencies. We've been waiting years for someone brave enough to activate it. Someone who would not only expose the corruption but would know how to rebuild these companies the right way. As if on cue, Janet's phone rings. The board vote is in, she announces. They're not just confirming Sarah as CEO, they're appointing her to lead the industry-wide reform committee. Sarah looks around the room, at her brother clutching their father's legacy, at Gerald finally unburdened of his secrets, at Janet and Maya revealed as long-term allies in the fight against corruption. The rejection letter that once broke her heart now seems like destiny. But before she can respond, one final notification appears on her screen. Project Phoenix Phase 2 initiating. New targets identified. Below it, a list of companies across every industry, all showing the same patterns of discrimination and corruption. Sarah touches her grandmother's pearl earrings, thinking of all the other qualified candidates who were rejected, all the voices silenced, all the talent wasted. She looks at her team, her unlikely army of truth-tellers and justice-seekers, and makes her decision. Well, she says, a determined smile spreading across her face, I guess becoming CEO was just the beginning. Who's ready to change the whole game? The sun rises higher over Seattle, illuminating a new day in corporate America, and in a conference room high above the city, a team of whistleblowers, led by a once rejected candidate turned CEO, prepares to spark a revolution of transparency that will reshape the business world forever. But that's not the end of the story. It's just the end of Chapter 1. Because on Sarah's screen, a new message is blinking. Mitchell Family Legacy Protocol activated. Additional systems detected. Ready to proceed. The next chapter was about to begin, and this time, Sarah Mitchell wasn't just going to break through the glass ceiling. She was going to rebuild the entire structure, one transparent brick at a time. 6 months after the events that shook corporate America, Sarah Mitchell stands at a podium in Horizon Technologies' renovated auditorium. The room is packed with faces both familiar and new, employees, media, and most importantly, the very people who had once been rejected like her. When I walked out of this building 5 years ago with a rejection letter, I thought it was the end of my story, she begins, her grandmother's pearl earrings catching the light. Instead, it was just the beginning of something much bigger than myself. The audience includes Marcus, beaming proudly from the front row, and Janet, who now heads Horizon's new corporate ethics division. Maya sits beside her, having turned her coding expertise toward developing transparency tools that are becoming the industry standard. Gerald Thompson, now working as an advisor for the SEC, offers a knowing nod. The changes at Horizon Technologies have been dramatic but purposeful. The company's stock, after an initial shock, has risen to record heights. Investors and customers alike have flocked to what's being called the most transparent tech company in America, but the real transformation goes deeper than numbers. Sarah gestures to the screen behind her, displaying the faces of Horizon's new executive team, a diverse group of talented individuals. many of whom had been on that original rejection list. Together, we're not just building better technology, she continues. We're building a better way of doing business. The Mitchell Family Legacy Protocol, as it turned out, wasn't just about exposing corruption. It was about creating a framework for genuine corporate reform. Companies across industries are now adopting what's being called the Mitchell Standard, a set of transparency and equity guidelines that are reshaping how businesses operate. Richard Chen and his Weber Tech conspirators faced justice, but Sarah made sure their story served a greater purpose. Their cases became cautionary tales in business schools, teaching future leaders about the importance of ethical leadership and genuine inclusion. The conference room where everything went down has been transformed into a collaborative space named Phoenix Hall. Its glass walls now display a scrolling list of the company's decisions, contracts, and hiring practices, a constant reminder of their commitment to transparency. But perhaps the most significant change is visible in the lobby, where a new installation catches every visitor's eye. It's a wall of screens showing real-time data about the company's operations, hiring practices, and decision-making processes. Below it, a simple plaque reads, "In memory of James Mitchell, who taught us that true success is built on integrity." Sarah steps away from the podium to unveil the company's latest initiative, a technology incubator specifically designed to support entrepreneurs from underrepresented backgrounds. The program, named Reset, will provide funding, mentorship, and resources to those who might otherwise be overlooked. Rejection doesn't define you, Sarah tells the audience, her voice firm with conviction. It's what you do with that rejection that matters. Sometimes, the door that closes in your face becomes the one you need to break down, not just for yourself, but for everyone coming after you. The ceremony ends with an unexpected announcement. The Mitchell Standard is being adopted by a consortium of international companies, creating a global movement toward corporate transparency and ethical leadership. Sarah's story of rejection and redemption has become a catalyst for worldwide change. Later that evening, in her office with its spectacular view of Seattle, Sarah finds herself looking at that old rejection letter, now framed on her wall. Next to it hangs a photograph of her father, smiling knowingly as if he had always known how things would turn out. Maya knocks on the door, tablet in hand. "Ready for Phase 3? She asks with a grin. On her screen, a new list of companies shows suspicious patterns similar to what they found at Weber Tech. The fight for corporate transparency is far from over. Sarah touches her grandmother's pearls one last time, thinking of all the other barriers yet to be broken, all the other voices waiting to be heard. "You know what?" she says, standing up from her desk. "I think we're just getting started." As the sun sets over Seattle, casting long shadows through the transparent walls of Horizon Technologies, Sarah Mitchell, the rejected candidate turned CEO turned corporate reformer, leads her team toward their next challenge. Because sometimes the greatest victories don't come from getting what you want, but from changing the system that denied you in the first place. And somewhere, in the endless lines of code running through Horizon's servers, her father's final message continues to pulse like a heartbeat. Build it better. Make it fairer. Leave it stronger than you found it. The story of the rejected candidate who became CEO didn't end with a simple revenge or personal victory. It ended with something far more powerful, a revolution in corporate culture that started with one woman's courage to turn rejection into reformation. But then again, maybe it hasn't ended at all. Maybe it's still being written, one transparent decision at a time, in corner offices and boardrooms across the world. Because as Sarah Mitchell learned, the best way to break through a glass ceiling isn't just to shatter it, it's to build something better in its place. As she gathers her team for their next mission, Sarah smiles, knowing that somewhere out there, another candidate is facing rejection. But this time, thanks to the changes they've set in motion, that candidate might find not just an open door, but a whole new world of possibilities waiting on the other side.